I did the 214 times. So 1500.
I looked up like, nah, I'm moving.
Me too. There you go. That's good right there. Leave it right there.
Right
I don't know what's going
here, go ahead.
Oh.
You know.
Yes, that's what
I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Order to go. Chairman McCormick is present, I'm present, Perry is present, Matt Jeffries is present, Mary Ellen is present, William Bronner is present. Convocation and pledge. You want to do that? Sure. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this food. We ask you to bless it for nourishment, and bless the hands who make it. We ask that you guide us in this budget workshop. Help us be good stewards of the town's resources and just give us your guidance, and we thank you for all your blessings in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. Community announcements. The community announcement program, citizens, staff for outstanding contributions to the community. A reminder about an upcoming event, organized or sponsored by the governing body. An announcement of an imminent threat to public safety that's arisen after the posting of this agenda. We got any community announcements? We have used in the park this weekend. It'll be a hot one. Yep. I mean, the temperature of the hat. Yeah. I heard the guy's pretty good. This Saturday, it's the 20th anniversary of Hope Food Bank. That's it. Right. Yeah, so. Urge everybody go up there. Wants to volunteer. Nice offices. Nice. Are they doing a good week? Yes. No other citizen or community can have. Citizen input. Is there a citizen? All right, I'm one, discuss city finances, tax rate, budget, initiative, operations, and strategic plans, and limited to, but including directions regarding the tax rate, employee compensation and benefits, FY 22, and city departments and services, revenues and expenses.
Mayor, council members, for those of you who do not know, this is Matt Holmes. He is our IT contractor with local circuits. As a couple of you asked during our last budget workshop, we wanted to look at what a capital improvement for all of our IT needs. So what I did is contacted Matt and asked him to take an overall review of all of our departments and all of our hardware, software, and where we're at. And he's come up with a proposal, and I asked him to be here tonight to present this information. So Matt, all.
Like I said, we kind of evaluated all the departments up and including the fire department, since we're going to be working with those guys from October. We looked at their computers, networking equipment, servers, that type of thing. Kind of put a cost together on what it would be to update anything that wasn't, newer, that would be expired, what we kind of consider a 5-year rotation for PCs and servers, that type of thing. This is kind of what we come up with. We looked at, our goal over the next 5 years is going to be to kind of stair step the city into kind of a more cloud type environment, which I know was been requested by several people, so. But we also have limiting factors, like just turning flexible wireless people internet that, you know, is good, but, you know, does have its ups and downs. That type of thing, so what we've kind of put in place is kind of stair stepping to where we want to get you over the next 5 years. All in hardware costs, we kind of have around $132,681, and that's for all the departments. Now what we did was we took the number of computers that were, you know, expiring, computers that were requested from different departments, adding on to them, kind of gave it a flat rate cost across the board for a laptop and a desktop, just to make the numbers work easier. So, but everything is either retail or a little bit higher, just based off of, you know, changes that may occur with the regulations of the economy. So, and then we also have just kind of an estimate on what your 5-year, like monthly, expenses would be, all in, which is what's there on the bottom of the first page. That includes the service and support, also included your email posting and things like that are already in cloud. That is all in with the 50 users for the fire department being added on to the platform, because they're currently hosting their own. So that's kind of what we went through.
Leanne, does this include your schematic on who you're planning over the next 5 years?
Yes, it does. What I did is I sat down with Matt and kind of looked at what we're doing in the future, and we added hardware here that will allow us to we added 10 computers over the web, actually, the 132.
Okay.
So we could look at where we're going to be next year. We may add some employees, and we may have some additions or replacements that we didn't catch during this process. So it's either 8 or 10. We added 10 to incorporate that. Now, the answer, the overall answer to the question would be, for the end, we would, after we, if the council decides to do this plan, what I want to do is after October 1, sit down with Matt, and I want to come up with a capital replacement plan that will allow us over the next 5 to 10 years to be able to replace and add as we go based on the projections we have.
Okay.
So it should flatten your budget.
Right.
As we move forward, it'll flatten us out over the years, so we don't have these large spikes where we need to replace it. So that was something that I asked Matt to do in this process, was to look at anything that within 2 years of being replaced. So this amount includes items that are only 3 years old.
Okay.
This library, does that include staff only, or is just the patron? It's everything. Everything in the library looks like from they were all, the age of the library stuff is like everything's nearly 100%, like almost 5 years old. I think they had one computer in there that was a little different, so we did that. One of the big things we want to look at doing is replacing the current firewalls that are in place at City Hall and the library. One, to allow for the increased bandwidth that we are supposed to be getting with the incoming fiber connections. When we put them in originally, they were put in to, you know, meet the needs of what was in there now with what we have at speed of light. So increasing those firewalls will allow you to use that, assuming a gigabit bandwidth that you are going to be getting at each location, on top of being able to develop a site-to-site VPN from all the locations into City Hall, or even a mesh back and forth to each other. But right now we use all. Right now, yes, that could reuse the current firewall that's in City Hall, but as an example, you had a gig circuit, you're going to slow down significantly to probably around 300. Just because that's what that particular device can. Those are all, and even with the gig circuit, just so you know, they'll be slow, a little slow down. I mean, those are just essentially little microcomputers. Firewalls are. They've got to be able to process the data that's coming through them. So you're going to get some slowdown no matter what. So to be able to check it for, you know, malicious activity and things like that, it's going to slow it down some. But we won't be able to utilize too much of it.
Open fiber actually gets us the 2 gig, they're saying.
The hardware outprice will do a 1 gig pass through on it. So, I mean, we can look at something bigger, but you're stepping up a good bit of the cost of the firewalls or something like that. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, none of your departments are gonna need too big right now. It'd be great to have, but I mean, you won't utilize it. So, it's just the number of people.
You gotta get them to talk to us at some point.
Yeah.
They want to talk to him. They wanna talk to me.
I went and knocked on the door the other day. And put that new office on the roof and. That shows good. Yeah, so I don't know if you wanted to go through each individual.
Just kind of hit the high points with them so they know what city hall means. All right, you don't have to read it all, it's kind of what you do for me. just
Okay.
about, about
All right. City Hall's just a, a couple computer, I think just one replacement, all of them are pretty new, plus the addition of the two new ones that they requested over the next few years. I mean, everything here, my thought process would be to have City Hall kind of be the heart of the network, once we combine everything. Then you'd be able to utilize the site-to-site VPNs to get in and share data that needs to be kept local, but we can also separate stuff off, for the CGIS stuff, the fire, police department, the HIPAA stuff that goes with the fire department, that type of thing, we can still secure off ourselves. Putting in a new server here in a hybrid environment, when I want to say hybrid, it's kind of meshing local control with Microsoft 365 cloud, which are already used. Which then the next step after that would be just getting rid of the server here locally. We're just not there yet. Especially with your internet currently, things like that. I would not recommend going 100% to the cloud yet, which is why the hybrid is kind of the next step for you guys to kind of get you there. Again, we'll have the infrastructure, the buildings, whatever y'all planning on doing over the next 5 years, we can, take that next step. So we kind of have a heavier server here at City Hall quoted out. With critical stuff, battery backups, the firewall and the firewall license. So with these more modern, what we call unified threat management UTM devices, they you have to pay for service for them. Then you're getting your updates, your security updates, not just that, but your warranty, your customer service replacement, things like that. If they're that, all are required to be purchased. So they can do that annually. You can do it 3 years, a 5-year license, that kind of thing. It's cheaper to buy it in bulk. So the 5-year license, if you buy it outright, is about $2,500 to $3,000 cheaper than if you were to buy a license every year. So I just went for the 5 years since that's what we were kind of talking about as well. So all in on the City Hall would be $34,662 for everything. And again, we just priced the desktops and the laptops at $1,600 a piece. Put a cushion in there for inflation, that type of thing. But the desktops, that would be a desktop with either dual monitors or a big monitor. Laptops, that would be a laptop with a monitor docking station, that type of thing. And then we have the network attached storage device, or NOS box is what we call it. It's basically just network hard drives. So for backups, we usually put them in to back up the local service anyway, but putting in a bigger one here at City Hall would allow us to back up the local server. We could use it for redundant storage for the other departments for offsite storage, since we'll have a VPN connected to it, and we are able to do a local backup of your 365 environment. So all your emails, SharePoint, things like that, OneDrives that are getting in the cloud. Although we have a cloud backup of them, we could put a application on the NOS box that would bring that down. I doubt Microsoft's disappearing anytime soon, but I like to be fair for just about everything. Police department, essentially the same thing, replacing a few 7 computers. That's what they have. Their current firewall right now is more of a standard firewall because of the requirements they have with Denton County to have that VPN open to the CAD and RMS system. Denton County is going to a new service. I think their estimated time for that is in March. Once they do that, they'll be completely web-based. We won't have a need for that VPN, and we can actually upgrade their firewall to something that provides them with better protection. So they do pretty much have a standard firewall in there now. So we would want to replace that with one of these UTM boxes like we have here in the library currently to just provide better network protection. And they already have a server that's just 2 years old, so we're good there. We wouldn't need to upgrade the NOS box. They just have a lot of investigative data that takes up a lot of space. So we're kind of banging on the limit of what. So same thing with the firewall and the licensing. The unknown, I don't know, there is WatchGuard server, which is where their cameras, for their body cameras in cars. Has an operating system that's gonna expire on it next year, so we need to start looking at, talking to WatchGuard about upgrading that, and server that stores that. as well. Didn't know a cost for that, so I just put 5,000, they usually kind of charge it, so I just took a guess at what that might be, but. So all in for the police department, we've got 25,562. Library is pretty much a total overhaul. Like I said, all their computers are knocking on 5 years. They will be past that by the year.
Maybe help me understand why we have 8 staff PCs and we have 5 staff members.
So they've got, now I count their card catalog, their desk computers, like they have 2 there, we have a director's computer and a couple in the second. So I'm just going based off of what they had when we took them over and what they currently have.
Four in the back. One's used by collection, one by public services. Then we have 2 back there, one down for courier service, and the other is kind of like a backup. If 2 people need to put in or something like that, we like 4. And then the 2 in the front, kind of like the circulation procedure. We need one that I'm not talking about, we have a search items on their own. Then we need one to come and ask us, and then we want to talk about this as well. Seems like. Okay, and do we ever have 9 people at once using the tunnel? It's gotten pretty close, it just kind of depends. How much people are in different offices. It's not always the case, sometimes it's just 3, but we have never got 2 that way. I'm assuming that's why they've kept so many people on. I mean, if we need them, I think obviously we can replace them, but if we don't need 8, if we can be checking the in at the front desk, or we have 2 in the back, I just can't imagine our staff is using 7 computers, so one at one time. One of the 4 in the back doesn't get utilized very often at all. We only need 3 in the back, who's definitely off. The patron computers, I'm a little leery to take them out, just because if we're using them. Yeah, I don't want to take it in, but we can definitely reduce it by this one, I want that. I know it's not a lot, but if we don't need something, I'd rather not. Putting it in the budget, it's just putting it in.
So their server, same thing, it's fixed to be 5 years old. That's kind of like some of the time to replace. They've got to keep something in-house because they run the D3 software, which lockdowns the patient machines, runs their CASI programs with science they use and whatnot on the patient machines, that type of thing. So you've got to keep something local there. My goal is to, especially for the city hall, fire department, and the library, to utilize the hybrid environment. The police department come on board with that once, run the server. So they don't have to be real powerful machines for the servers. So we got to be able to get that job done.
Would it be better to have a second server at the library and keep the public on a separate server than our staff?
I mean, we have it separated right now, so I mean, I don't see a big issue with it. And the patient machines, I think they speed into a drive, they don't really have network access, they're setting them off. So they're essentially virtually on the network. That way. The V3 software is nice, they can screw up those computers as much as they want, just to simply reboot. But I mean, we can physically separate them, network wise, if you want them physically separated right now, it's just kind of VLANs, virtual. Having the network will switch and firewall to everyone else talking to it. That's same thing with the firewall, licensing there. We want to put NOS box in there too, just for the backups. Fire department, that's kind of the big one. I'm talking with them over there. They've got 9 computers at their main station, 3 at the second station. I was told several of them, I think 4 of them have been ordered to be replaced already for over here on main station. There's 3 to be replaced to bring them kind of up to date. They asked to add a 4th one to secondary station as well. Same firewalls for them, and I want to put, again, just a basic file hosting server in their main station, the site-to-site VPN, the guys at the second station can access it if they want to. Also, do that, have access to SharePoint stuff that the city needs, but they're currently running, from what I can tell, somewhere around a 10-year-old server. The operating system on it is Small Business Server 2011, which reached into live 2 years ago. So they definitely need for a server. They have a kind of standard firewall over there as well. They were kind of in the same situation as the PD was with the connection back to the county. But in talking with the county, they've gone web-based already for what they need, so that VPN is no longer. So we can move them to, the upgraded firewall while maintaining the connection with the other stations as well. So they kind of have a little bit more hardware to buy, server, backups, Mozbox, the firewalls. And then when we manage somebody, we have a certain stack of network equipment stuff that we put in, so we want to upgrade their switches to something that we can centrally manage, upgrade security. I've got 3 access points on there. Those are always kind of give or take, especially metal buildings and a lot of equipment. I'm basing it off of what I think will work 52, 54, just depending on what we need to kind of start testing and start putting stuff. Secondary stations, same thing, just a couple of replacements. And then I'll have the information about the county added to the department. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the fire department. They do have a couple extra items. We have to do a project to move their aubreyfire.com emails to aubreytx.gov. So the project inside of that, and then the onboard and getting all the servers and everything set up over there. Separate projects as well. They can choose to keep Aubrey Fire or use AubreyTX.gov, whatever y'all want them to do. Security stuff, one or the other, so go for it, so they don't lose anything. That's what about it. The last page is kind of an estimate on what your monthly service would look like with all departments involved, including fire department, including all the extra computers that have been requested. That's what it would look like on a monthly basis. Our services are kind of the top for support, IT support. The bottom section there is your GovCloud, your email. Now we do bundle that into packages. So the email costs are a little bit cheaper, but if you buy email through us, because email is somewhere in the 80 to 85% of where your threats and whatnot come in to your networks, we take that kind of serious. So we bundle in our emails with spam and virus filtering. We've got what we call a 365 threat SIM on it, which looks for, Joe logged in Aubrey at 3 o'clock and is logging in from China at 5. There's no way in the world he made that trip. So they're not going to allow it to get logged in and that kind of thing. So just looks for, people hacking into it, people from accessing emails from other countries, that type of thing. It's got a phishing filter on it, so it's helping protect against people who are trying to, hey, send me a gift card, and you're busy kind of thing. That seems to be very prevalent in cities. So we also do a 365 backup, so all the emails getting backed up. Not just a backup, but we do for cities and municipalities, archiving, so every email that comes in and out of that system is logged and stored away. So it doesn't matter if you delete it out of your inbox, the system still has a copy of it. For open records primarily, but also for just unfortunately happens malicious activity, people delete emails when they're not supposed to, that type of thing. So that's all part of that bottom there, which makes up about roughly 30% of it.
So in the conversation about fire, we discussed fire division 3.
We did not, and because that cost will be borne by the building. That process, at some point down the road, that will be included in that. 2 years down the road, I didn't want to have Matt quoting tech prices that are because we know that we 20% more if we have to do ballpark. So that cost, I just consider that be like furniture and everything else. Same thing on the police side of that. We didn't include anything on the police side. But we will add that. When that comes online, that will be then become part of our capital replacement plan as we go forward. Whatever that initial cost is, then we will start working that out. So that, you know, we may have to keep a computer 7 years in order to get a good start. And replace 1 and 3. If it's not doing well, and you replace 1 and 7, keep your move the pieces around until we have a steady cost back.
Matt, do you feel like 5 years is adequate for replacement?
Yes. Our normal recommendation for like heavily used desktops is 3 to 5 years, and just regular computers about 5. Most of them are right at 5. Some of them kind of sort of replace them just because, I mean, computer may still work, but you know, my computer's running slow. You know, take it to send the crank out around 4 or 5 years, so maybe it's working as quickly as it can. But I think this would, you know, this would take the city and have a central SharePoint online to where you can, and we're already in the process of moving them from Dropbox over there. So we have a central SharePoint that we can set up access for anybody in the city who has a, you know, at TX.gov account, they can access. Set up limitations on who can see what for. And all that can be accessed from anywhere, anytime, you know, city computer, whether you're traveling or and then you still have the PD sitting with their CGStat on their local server, the fire department having a smaller kind of file server to handle what they need to keep separate. And then, you know, VPN in the back, so we can back to, you know, City Hall. It's just kind of a, like I said, in my opinion, a good stair step to being totally cloudless and, you know, the 5 to 10. Because 2025 is, if I remember correctly, Microsoft said they're going to cut off local, what we call Active Directory, which controls using passwords, things like that. That'll be the last operating system, the server operating system that they produce. So they are pushing everybody that way. I just don't think we're ready to do that. When you get the fiber, I would highly recommend keeping speed alive from state that we're getting it for free. So these firewalls are set up to where we can have dual lanes. So for whatever reason, we can set the point-to-point as a secondary, and fiber as your primary for whatever reason. With the construction and everything going on, somebody cuts a fiber line, you're down for 6 seconds instead of days while they do the repair. You know, firewalls fell over to the secondary. When the first one comes back online, it also sits on the popping back over. So kind of putting redundancy in as much as we can.
So we'll be looking at this 132 change in this year, this fiscal year budget, right?
I would recommend round as well. To the 140, just in case.
Yeah.
And then like I said, on the monthly stuff, we don't really change our prices that much. We typically do a 5% increase on our service costs annually. Just to kind of keep up with things like your email and whatnot. I don't increase unless the vendors increase. So this past year, Microsoft increased their 365 costs, I think for the first time in 10 years. So everybody got a bump because of that. I don't, you know, I have a good stack set up. I'm confident with it. I'm happy with it. I don't anticipate unless my vendors come back and say, hey, you know, we're doing this to this, then we typically pass just that cost along. But other than that, it's just a 5% on our service level stuff. So if you're looking at the price change on these years that I have here on page 1, it's not all of what's on this. It's pretty much the top stuff, not the cloud infrastructure services. So the top ones that changes. Go ahead, unless I can answer any questions.
First of all, we would have to go out for bid. We're under that with this, right?
Well, you don't have to be and
I know we've worked with you for a long time. I just want to make sure.
the problem we have right now is that we probably paid a little more for Exeter for last year. If we were on, if we were in a perfect environment, it could be it. But we're in a situation where if Matt finds it with laptops, we have to latch on to it. Because I'm still waiting right now I have 3 brand new police cars sitting in the house and waiting for a computer house on it, and they can't. So it's really scary. So if we had to, we could, if Matt comes back to me and says, well, these prices are a little high, and we have to go out and we'll see what we can find, because most of them are on state contract. Anyway. And it's something this big, we would want to look at the state contract and see what's out there, what's available. We can work with.
So great comprehensive plan. This is where we need to go and stuff is like for the next, right? It's not just I think we did for it.
We decided to do something facility wide or something like that, just pick up.
Yeah, and the. In the building, fire, that's it. Yeah, fire, I mean, you're not, the good thing about these firewalls are they're not dependent on your static IP addresses that you get from your internet provider, because they're all the same make and model. They have a cloud environment of their own. So yes, we can pick up and move. I mean, even if something, just tornado hit one of the buildings, we were able to sell some of the equipment, we can take it, set it up wherever, it's going to instantly build up and back up as soon as it's up. So the only difference if you move would be not in your internet provider. Hopefully if it's not there, or whatever your IP address is, the internet providers give. None of this is dependent on that. Questions for me?
Yeah, thank you.
Man, well, I think everything going forward, have to help over again.
Did you put your email on, is that you on the back there, or well?
I think I have one, but it's just Matt at the local circuit.com. He's the circuit.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Matt. I really thank you. So.
We're gonna replace this car.
Okay.
We should have already replaced it. We had to.
That's the way spot on the carpet.
It'll be the cleanest spot, is that what you
When we went.
I said, thanks, AJ, for the food. He said, my pleasure. I was like, man, you worked that shit. Actually, little Stacy, that grant, that was nice enough to get that for us.
And then we'll bring them in.
Yes, thanks for appreciate it. So I'm going to give an overview on where the budget's at. So I gave you all this little presentation. I'll follow along with me when I go through that. This pack is the detail line items for the general departments and the enterprise departments. It's in numerical order. I didn't combine the police department, so you're gonna find 5114 toward the back. And then all the way at the back is 601, which is the little station. But it's just in numerical order. If you've got a question, it's easier for us to get to it. There are some items that Leanne is going to talk to us about when I get done here. I have not factored those in here yet, but I do have a sheet that summarizes those costs, so we can look at those. But anyways, I'd like to start off by going through the items that we talked about on June 11th at our first meeting. And just tell you the way I've addressed those. So I'm going to start on that next page and was a general fund revenue. Lower the property taxes. I'm working with Jim Savonis on our tax rates. We're not to a point where I can present something to you, but notionally they are going, they have is probably going to go down, given the mix of new homes, which is good, but brings value of existing homes, which is pushes it down. So don't know where that's at, but I don't want to say arbitrarily, but I've taken 100,000 of revenue out of the property tax that was in last. But we're definitely working on that, finding an update as soon as we have something we can show you.
In July, that's all.
But yeah, those are certified numbers. The next item, I removed the franchise fees from water and sewer. So remember, we did talk about the general admin charging water and sewer franchise fees. So I backed those out. And further in, I have some detail on what those amounts are. So I'll go over these back quickly. The higher revenue that when I did this, it was proposed, and it looks like that it'll probably be adopted. That we charge Silverado, Aspen Meadows. I'm not sure about Sandrock yet. I have not factored those in. So that brings it up when I put those in. Moving down to general fund expense. So we did talk about changing the budget rate from 5% to 6%. So I've done that. Now I increased the group insurance to 25% increase over this year. The initial renewal input we're getting from UHC is not good. Our experience rates are very high, so I'm budgeting 25%, and I am hoping we end up there somewhere around 25. Okay, that is a potential that I might have to add some more expense. Because the renewal that we got from UHC is much higher.
Are we looking at other providers?
Absolutely. We're looking at other providers, other plans, everything we can think of. So they're working. Wellspring, I spoke with that. He's expecting to come out and tell us, what his recommendations are. I can look at. See about how we do. But that is also an item I'm very concerned. I did mention, I don't know, it really didn't have much of an effect, but the longevity, that's an easy number to calc, so I just calculated it manually. And it brought it down a little bit, but I trued them up for all the departments. Then we did add the cost for home rule mailing. I'll give you those amounts in a minute. We added landscaping to the library. We added a second election for home rule. We only had one election in that first. I trued up the streets department TML, was just a few bucks, but I brought it in line with the 15% increase I had on the other departments. I did add 5 PCs to admin. We'll have to see if that in fact is going to still be used. Yes, sir.
Why is there a second election?
I understand there's 2 elections. One is a normal.
Regular May election and then the additional one in November for home rule charter.
Who's in November, the
General.
general election?
Our election is in May.
So we're doing, well,
Won't home rule be in November?
Yes.
So want to be part of the general election?
We'll have a second one. We'll have an additional election in May,
right,
like we always do in May.
No.
so it's not.
May.
Second.
It's not a second home rule.
Oh, yes,
Second
it's
election.
not 2 home rule elections,
Two elections.
2 elections because
Election, yeah. That's what was going. When I think it was gonna be.
Last 2 bullets, we had a Christmas tree lighting to Edmund, peanut festival to Edmund. And we decided today to move those parks, so I'll just keep those expenses parks. Enterprise fund, I did increase the impact fees and increased for water billings. On the expense side, it's the same budgeted pay raises and group insurance are up. I drew up longevity. We added some trading to the sewer department. And you can see we moved franchise fees. Now I did move. I had capital in that first order. It was throwing the budget off. So I moved that to assets and I replaced it with what was going to be there. It's going to be depreciation expense. So the net of that was positive impact to the enterprise fund expenses. I got those outside expectations. So the next one is the general fund revenue. First line is property tax. That's the 100,000 I moved. Sales tax I kept the same. The 135,000 franchise fees, that is the total of the water and sewer franchise fees that were budgeted to charge to them.
What is that?
That is, it's an internal charge to where I charge the enterprise from sewer and water for the administration. general admin group, me and, our folks, we do administrative tasks for water sewer. So you guys asked me to take that out. So you got that. So I should have said at the bottom there, surplus / deficit, so we still got a deficit there. We are, you guys are going to talk to us a little bit about the rate study. That we expect to have a better idea of the impact of the rate increase that we had talked about. I put placeholders in there right now, about $100,000. So it's going to be different. We just don't have those numbers yet. Moving on to the general fund expenses. This is really the next sheet is where I've got some of the detail, but this just gives you an idea of where the departments were on 6/11 and where they're at right now. The next sheet will explain the increase between 6/11 and 7/11. So the increase is $179,000. You can see the budgeted pay rates and group insurance. Those home rule mailings added 4,000. Library landscaping 5,000. You can see the numbers there.
We have irrigation. Or is that included? Okay.
And then in contract services, I added that second election. The cost of that, and then I added a compensation study at $11,000. And that's what made up that increase.
Compensation for the employee compensation.
Boy, and then the 5 PCs I mentioned, and then the Christmas tree lighting, 10,000 and 15,000. Again, I'm going to do that to streets and parks. I get parks and streets mixed up. You're not kidding, ladies.
Yeah. That was the part.
Around here, it's
Still is.
It is, yeah. Okay, and then the next sheet is the enterprise fund revenue. I talked about these. So impact fees, we're trying to factor in impact fees from Twin Ridge Phase 3B. And that's a placeholder we kind of look for that. And the enterprise.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Under garbage? Is that with the new contract? Is that
Good
what-
question. No, that is still at the old rate, so we've got to update that also.
Okay.
And then the department expense, again, just a kind of a summary of the departments. But the next sheet shows the detail of the change. Down 532,000. The franchise fees, you see that there, so that is a plus to the reduction in expense for enterprise. And then I note about classifying the fixed assets, capital purchases. And then I had that 145,000, that was a mistake, that bond has been paid off, so we don't have to have that expense. And then finally, capital. So my first note there, number one, I added the 5 PC, that's the one that I talked about 3 times. And then I added the station 3 at 8.6 million. And then I added a placeholder, although I don't have any amounts, but to keep that in front of us, I added park land purchases and a sports complex.
Take all of the rest of that, double it, and that's probably close to the parks.
Yeah. You need this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got TV.
We'll let Oscar go to check that.
So that is kind of a summary of where we're at from the first workshop to the second. Any questions for me before we move on? I got the detail as we go through. If you have questions, I haven't memorized everything, but
Do we really think a water rate study would cost $50,000? I was hoping you were gonna think somebody else.
The last one, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but the last one that we did was 25,000. So that was in 19, said it started in 15, then 17, so that is just a guess. What I have done is we looked to see who else done a rate study, that we did, back off their RFP. We currently have a contract with Plummer and Associates, and they do offer the rate study through one of their third parties. So we've asked them to provide us the scope of the work. So we should know by Friday what that costs.
When we start looking at the water, sewer and everything, are we gonna take into consideration what we're spending on capital? For those, the 650,000, because the fees should be paying for this as well.
That's what our current rate was developed. We did it today. So I'm assuming that they'll have both those.
We want to see how they look at that. How do they factor that in? They just look at the depreciation, they look at the debt service. Do they have a cost of capital? I don't know how to do it. So if we start this study, I think we can get some of that out.
Well, I'd like them to understand that our water and sewer costs impact half of our residents. So being a true capital, to me, is an impact everybody. These two don't.
Right.
So it's hard to split that amongst everybody. And people that use a true capital expense.
It's, this all happens inside. All the capital, I know we talk about capital as an overall capital, but this capital only comes out of the enterprise fund. It doesn't come out of. Correct. So when Leanne is telling you she needs utility structure 60,000, that's coming either from the enterprise fund or from debt that is funded by the enterprise. Doesn't come from the general.
So the water rate payers pay not a general tax. Right, so you guys don't contribute to that. Right there.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
The difficulty though, is the same thing we borrow Mustangs, camera truck. Every once in a while.
We borrow their equipment. Yes, we do borrow.
Oh.
Already.
The larger. It's not larger, but what you're talking about where it's difficult is when we are talking about. Right. And then we have to start sectioning that off. How much of this capital is going to come from the enterprise to serve water or sewer?
Yeah, I'm not as concerned, like to me personally, I'm not as concerned about those types of things, because I think those are more for the city to communicate and do what they need to do. But I think we're looking at major expenses we need to look at.
Yeah, some of that gets a little tricky because as you start buying dump trucks from that enterprise fund, then you can't use that dump truck for another project on the other side, like on a parks department. So that dump truck technically has to stay in the enterprise fund and only be used for enterprise fund functions. So sometimes you want to transfer money out of the enterprise fund, buy it out of capital, and be able to use it anyway you need to.
So I'm good with that.
Do you want to talk about the capital now? Versus sure, Are we too soon? Is that, do we have a special?
So, a little bit of a question. Forgive me, because I was flipping through this really quick. We have projected revenue of 13 million. Yep. As of now. And our expenditures at this point is 12.5. So we're about $500,000 to the plus at this point.
That's right.
Okay. So. Computer stuff was not included in this. So that, you gotta take. That $140,000 out of that. So. As we're looking at additional ads, remember, we only have
307.
370,000 or so.
I expect that number to go up. Because, as Mike told you, we did not factor in Sandbox Silverado increases and the number of houses that are on the ground right now. I mean, just throwing a number out there, I would expect that to go up 400,000 at least.
Well,
in
and
revenue.
we always try and project that. Tax revenue pretty low too, so.
Yes.
Can I ask about those agreements we have with those Silverado, Sandbrook, even Arrowbrook? What is our term with them? How long are they locked in and what could they just say, we don't need your services anymore?
Any of us, I believe, that any of the parties can do a 60-day. If I'm not mistaken, it's been a minute since I've read the ILAs. I'd have to go back and make sure of what that is. But as you know, we have already requested an increase. I spoke with all of their attorneys today. We don't have it in the works. We are Sandbar Silverado. It's actually the Lakes Freshwater District. And it's in County Freshwater District number.
Oh, it's in the airport.
Yeah, in there, I think 6. Is that right? 6. You know, is there, is that right? Number 6. So our ILA is with those two,
Okay,
with Sandrock, whatever their water district is, and with the Lakes, for 25 years. 25 year
got a
agreement.
60-day out.
I can't remember if it's a 60 day.
Well, this is my concern.
It's one.
So we're gonna build a $10 million fire station for a community that could give us 60 days. to Cancel their
Don't
agreements
hold
with
me
us,
to that. I want to go look.
or 120 even.
When Mike, he's on here today, I want to go pull the ILA. Correct. I don't want you.
Okay,
Think bigger picture though, because that fire station gives you a presence. And a location of this fire accident.
right. Oh, I get that. I'm just saying, is there a way to look at those agreements and have it be a longer term to start? So can we have a minimum 5 years and then from there it's 120 days out? Should we be looking at those agreements? Because if Silverado is wanting us to build something there, right? They've given us land and we're committed to doing that. We need something in return as well.
Let me read the agreement before we leave this time. I'll give you.
Or just maybe let us know.
But right now, we have requested the increase. That's what I was saying. We want the revenue side. And that's not factored in at this point. I did get information today that it looks like that increase will not be. We won't get a no at this point, is what I'm thinking. It won't be protested.
One thing with those districts too, is they have to get approval from TCEQ anytime they change the fire agreement. Or for their agreement, so they have to have protection. So they would have to get approval from TCEQ to change it. Just like when we just gave a Artesia, a Prosper, they had to get approval from TCEQ first before we could even go to the election. Arrowbrook is part of the water district, and that works kind of like it did with Artesia. They would have to vote District 10 completely, and everybody would have to vote to switch. So that's a pretty major ordeal for the match to switch from two different fires. They can't just go to the little.
That's what I'm thinking. The line is starting to build so much right there off of 428. I guess he's gonna put something there quick. So Sandbrook is literally right across the street. So do we have any protections with Sandbrook in particular?
We have to look at the agreement. I know it's a 25-year agreement, the out. I know it's all, I looked at that before. So
I don't.
I really think it, well, that,
But
I think it's the one.
maybe we should look at those agreements.
Yes.
Because the Salina's breaking ground. Yeah, stuff right across from Sandra.
pilot was approved in that skeleton, that entire. Everything of, the. Mobile, Smile. And that's all, so. That's 2,500. Sure, there's a fire station involved there.
Well, that's the thing, you gotta understand what the many homes, it's kind of like the water district, right? One station cannot handle that service.
Right.
There's just way too many homes out there. So even slide for the station out there, they could not handle the call volume. Those districts. So it would, just like with our station, the land station, you're gonna have a couple of stations. That area to provide those services. So,
Mutual.
yeah.
So capital. Last meeting, we talked about. Identifying those capital items that we could possibly purchase this year. So I asked our big spenders to do that, to go through the list and tell us what they could do, so maybe Leanne last. Because we know about your list. Maybe Mike can go through yours,
Yeah, ours is pretty, yeah, there's some radios and the thermal imagers and those smaller things we talked about. We've kind of looked at, some cost savings through, salary, so we gotta go back and readjust or reevaluate that market out, see what kind of money we have available to do that.
So that would be the plan, that we would reassess, forecast where we think we're gonna be, and if we are underspending in areas, that we would apply those against these. So we, the next year, hear them, we would be like sooner rather than later.
So everything else is pretty significant, so we, I mean, it's really just a couple items there that we really knocked off.
Better.
Hey, this was their idea.
And we got.
But yeah, we'll take it. There's only probably a couple items that we can take off.
Similar for the police department, we had.
Well,
smaller.
at your direction, the last time, we've already ordered city issue reference roads. We're looking for, I wasn't happy with the first bid that we had on the armor plating vests. And so we're looking at that again, because it was, I had a company in California quote us $6,000, and I questioned it immediately. I said, I'm not experienced with buying 25 armor plating vests at $6,000. And so we called the main company because this support. So now we're waiting on the third and best carrier company to tell us if we're gonna get in the middle. Because the top of the line one is 14 some change. And I'm not really keen on, if you're, if something costs from top of the line 6,000, and you're quoting 12, 14,000, you're quoting me 6, I'm losing something in the process. Something's just not right. So we're checking on that. And then the one that's missing here that we talked about, e-ticket riders. We're working on that as well to see if, once we come back to the council, we may have that at the next meeting to be able to say, hey, more force and riders. And then Leanne has her items out.
I would love for us to look at getting the computers going sooner than later.
I mean,
I think some of them have computers that are 7, 8, 9 years old. Or seem to be replaced.
Yeah, my question for him was gonna be what little more detailed specifications on hardware and stuff. So I figured that's something I gave him one.
I was surprised. And even police. Most of those are every 2 years, so.
I don't know, and he may not know. He's using a company right out of build computers for him.
Yeah.
And he specs them out so that we can get them. Because there is no, if you want something from Dell, you take what they give you off the shelf. Right. Before you're waiting months and months and months. That's what we're doing right now with Panasonic. Or at least we use the Panasonic MC 55 for the patrol cars. And they're not overly expensive, but they're not cheap either. And it took us, we received 2 that we ordered 14 months ago, about a month ago. So we're really, computers for us right now, when we bought laptops for new staff, we had to take what we could get. Yes. And we were lucky that Matt had a connection at one of the, at a vendor who had some Lenovo's that were available to us with the, docking station and everything. He found a set of secret cache, and we were able to buy some of it. So it really helped us out. But yes, you should email.
Each racks, gauge of the computers. I'm not exactly sure how much detail it has.
They have, once they, so we have a piecemeal situation here where they don't know about, they didn't know about every computer. that we have. So, local circuit at any given time can log into our computers and they can make adjustments, they can, check the firmware and do all of that information, update your firewalls, they can do all that remotely now. And so every month from them, we get a hardware cycle report that comes out to us. It tells us the age, what is the recommended replacement, is there any problems with this, have they had any issues with it? And we get that email to us each month. So that, but that's only on the ones that Matt has had control of. So now, every computer that comes into the city, rather than it just be handed to somebody and say, set it up, every computer that comes into the city either comes through Matt or is given to Matt. And they go in and they actually wipe the computer and start all over again and reload everything the way they want. And they put all the firewalls in, all of the protections, and then they load all of our software and all of their software, and then each computer gets code number. And then that's how they know which computer they're dealing with. So that's how they know which computer is what age and serial number and all of that. So he's a full. We were not utilizing Matt for everything that the local circuit could offer us. We were piecemealing his services out. What you have suggested here by doing this will put us fully under an IT umbrella that will know what all of our hardware and software.
Yeah, 'cause I know I had some concerns. We had some emails being accessed and we didn't even know that they still had access. And there was email addresses that have been created and things were being pushed to email addresses. So I'm sure he's got that under lock now.
All of our emails, remember when I changed yours, every email now is under Microsoft Office 365. That's where the only ones we don't have there right now are Fire. And that, as we discussed before, that was the goal, was to bring Fire in, because that's what I opened them up to have the same services that we have through Microsoft Office that they don't have. The whole office suite will be available to. So it's a good thing to have.
What size city do we need to be before we hire a chief person?
Well, while he was speaking earlier, I looked at his. Matt has a staff of him and 3, I believe, and we're paying him 72 a year to do our IT workforce. And he is they immediately address anything that we have. Do they have a workforce system?
120.
So, sorry.
I thought he said his last page is a monthly expense of
Some of that,
96.
to about 3,500 of that is Microsoft costs. So if you pull that off and you look at what Matt's doing, he's at about 72 of his service. And some of that 72, he also eats a couple of programs because they don't cost that much. But some of the mail protection and the spam, he doesn't charge us for it. That just comes as part of his service. So we don't have to pay for that. So really, I can't say a number at this point. When this number gets to a point that we need to start hiring in-house people, just like with Bureau Veritas and others, we don't want that to get out of whack. We want to keep an eye on this number, and when it
I
gets
don't
up
think
there,
72,000.
you know,
Some honest, probably spending 350.
and they are, I don't have any complaint with Matt at all. I mean, we've had contractors in the past that have given us problems, but he is, when we send,
He needs to cover the phone system.
when I've asked him, he doesn't want to.
Nobody
He doesn't even.
Mess with it. But he has help at local circuit.
The local.
The local circuit.
Don't forget the legal.
When I send him an email to the help desk, within 5 minutes, I have a ticket started. And usually if it's on my system, they know it's me when I send it, and they just immediately log into my computer and I see. And they start texting me, I'll be fixing this. Okay, now. I mean, they set up printers for us. You name it, if you have any, AJ.
Absolutely. They do it for me.
AJ help desk. He has to do
Thank
it.
you.
Or anything. When he onboards somebody, they. So I'm impressed with him. I did not realize. I thought we weren't getting, I'm skeptical. But I thought we weren't getting the best thing for our money with Matt. And then I realized we weren't utilizing that.
Right.
We were only letting Matt, we had him net down and we're only allowing him to do certain things. And when I told him that the council wanted to open this up and start, he's thrilled with it. Because this is the environment he likes to work, in, where he is able to see everything you have and tell you what you really be an advisor. So that, I guess the answer is, when that number gets to be more than we're ready to pallet, that's when we have to start looking.
I don't think we need two employees.
Yeah.
That way we're always covered. Right.
Right.
Yeah, just 2 employees, like nearly $200,000.
So the Leanne has some capital items that she and I talked today. She has some funding areas, and I'll let her describe to you, but you know, we're here to support her in this. Some of these things that I think she needs.
Some of these, I can cover through the departments, but since we're on the capital, the sheet that's in Mike's presentation. From monies that we have not spent to date in our budgets, and I don't anticipate spending in the next 2 months. We can fund the top 4, the truck, the turbo unit, the GIS, and the water rate study. And then also the I9 smart covers at the very last item. We can fund all of those now. If that's the direction we can go. In addition to a couple items that are not on that list.
Wait, you're adding stuff?
They're in this list.
Oh, they're in a different
They're
list.
not on this list. In our reorganization, and I can start back there, but in our reorganization, we were asking for 4 new positions. One of those positions I'd like to move forward with out of the 22 budget, the money's there. And then in October, we get the other 3 if it's approved. The utilities manager, that would be the inspector that we talked about for the infrastructure. And an additional utility truck. That will come with that position.
Good luck getting.
That's what. I was
Okay,
thinking.
cool.
We need
We
to-
can order them. I don't know.
We really need to decide and get
That's what
something.
on the computers too. We need something to order. Again, the reorganization, there's 2 positions in that reorganization that is only $3,500 for this year. We could look at doing that as well for the water superintendent and the GIS department.
Who's gonna be doing GIS?
Our intense Sherman Brown internal employee.
He's trying to get.
Yes. Now, we also have funding in here, for the integration. They'll come in and help us get everything set up and training and sharing with them. Probably, yeah.
Let her start.
That was kind of awkward, 'cause
I kind of got her into the middle of that. Let her start from the beginning, explain to the reorganization that she'll do. The things that we need to do today, because you know, we've had some issues of late. And we need to address those. And I think the end is come up with a fantastic plan to reorganize and get people you know what they say, we need the right people in the right seats on bus.
Right.
And I think she's got a good plan to do that. She didn't get presented last time, but we kind of powered through really fast, and I wanted her to be able to start over from the beginning. And explain to me what she's trying to do, so that you'll see it. So it's a good positive thing.
I don't mind that. There's just a couple tiny changes to it.
Well, my Washington, can we get rid of this that separates out what's gonna be funded from 2022? What's gonna be funded from another source like fire station 3, ladder truck? And what is being requested in the next budget? Because this list, I have trouble figuring out what's already got funded into it and what doesn't. So trying to figure out what's asking for.
So break it out in three pieces, 2022 piece, that we're gonna fund from existing.
That's what we're talking about now.
And then let's call it,
The jumps and bonus.
capital
bond.
funding. And then the third will be just standard FY 23.
Yeah, what we're asking for out of the next budget.
Got it.
You need another one.
Sorry, I thought you said about something.
Okay. Okay, so, for public works and development services, what I put together was like a 5-year plan, a reorganization plan, knowing that we would be looking at growth, be looking at adding people, adding departments, to give a little bit better direction and responsibility or accountability for particular areas. The proposal for this upcoming budget is to have 4 new positions total across all of these departments that you're looking at there. One of them would be a code enforcement officer, where we can bring that part in house. Animal control, we would still want to outsource that until we feel that we're ready for an animal shelter. That's last time. Kim said, "Yeah."
The last time.
So, do you think
But we could offset the cost of a new employee by what we're paying third party to do as far as code enforcement, and we could be at.
that's awesome?
I do too. Whether we already have the staff to do that now, or whether we hire somebody, just creating that position. And the other 2 are similar, the utilities manager and a public works manager. That intent is to split what we currently have as public works division now into 2. So we have a utility side, water and sewer, and then everything else would be over in the general public works, parks, streets, GIS, later down the road, not have some engineering, that kind of stuff, but water and sewer would be under one manager. And then all the other departments would be under another manager. That's gonna help us spread the workload. So that we can focus on areas that we need to focus on. The utility manager, one of their primary responsibilities is gonna be inspections of our new construction. And right now we have the lift station, Wilson lift station, we have the Faulkner well. We're going to be moving forward with another well, or at least that's in our master plan on Rockfield. And we're gonna be looking at another lift station out at Cleveland. We're gonna do a wastewater treatment plant expansion. Both of those 2,
Going back to the well. I think the only reason that was pushed through is because Janet probably wanted wells. Like to get up the worthwhile to spend millions of dollars building a well.
it is now, depending on our growth. We can't get an upper Trinity connection any earlier than 5 years, for a minimum of 5 years out. And based on our master plan that we did and the growth that we think that we're gonna have, we need that other well before the 5-year period.
Long before.
So,
What with that?
well, it all goes into our system, but what we'd be looking at is the developments that we're picking up. We're picking up the June one, the High Point. Or do we have some others that are coming into the area? Right now, we're actually on a modified requirement in TCQ, until we get the partner on price. Right now, we don't have the adequate capacity for the connections we have, so we're on a variance. So any more houses that we add, we're gonna need additional water supply. I don't have that presentation. Gary, Burkhoff, Henderson Park, he did that presentation a couple months or so ago at council and showed how we predicted the number of houses and the volume. But the way things are right now, we're gonna need more capacity before 5 years out.
We need to get on. That's actually connected.
We've already started that process. We're starting, the easements now and the design. That's why it was 5 years out. They're just now starting the process and it's a 5-year process. So we did fast track that, over the last 4 months or so. We requested service within 5 years.
It also would change to the platform. To that 80 easement. That change it out.
In Upper Trinity had already done their budget and they were able to go back and add us, so that we didn't have to wait another year for another budget. We're well into the process. It's just a long process. If things change, before we get to the point of needing that other well, then it could change. But right now it is part of the 21 CIP projects. And it's in that number of we are just now starting design. So if we get it designed and we don't need it, then we don't move forward with it. But based on our projections, we're going to need. Both of those two manager positions can be fully funded with a revenue stream. Our third-party inspection fees. So we're guaranteed over the next couple of years through the High Point and McKean development that would be fully funded with those revenue streams.
These managers, I assume, are going to be fully qualified with the highest certifications.
Yes, sir.
Somebody.
Somebody better than me.
Yeah, or better.
Comes with that is a lot of the plan review. I mean, we still have to have our engineer, but there's some of the plan review that they can take off my plate as well.
The utilities manager would be doing that, or public works manager for
The combination. So our public works managers going to be taking care of our roads, our streets. So they would be able to take a lot of that off. Yeah. They wouldn't just have inside city limits, they would have our streets out in ETJ as well. The streets and storm drain.
We promoted somebody or we supposed to this job.
We're gonna post them, and of course, internal can apply for them. And then the fourth one is a parks coordinator. Through our parks master plan, they really are pushing and telling me we need a superintendent, and I agree. But I think I'd like to start off with a coordinator. We don't really have much parks to have an actual superintendent. I think the coordinator can help us with these events that we're taking on. Plus be able to help start putting website together. All those things are going to be needed when we start these complexes, when we start building complexes. I did target the superintendent to be in year 25. We can move that up to 24 next year if we progress and start building parks that quickly. And then I think the coordinator will be able to help, and then we have 2 staff members now that would be dedicated to the parks department. So that would put 3 people in that department, so 2 full-time and a seasonal part-time. Parks.
and which were being promoted. Are you ready to this?
Landing my name on the blue square.
Who they are, those titles?
That all.
So our planners vacant. That was accrued, but we need to put them dollars in last budget cycle, we noticed it wasn't there. So that's technically approved. The permit coordinator, that's a promotion. We have a permit technician right now, that's Shanda. And, she's in a coordinator role. She's doing a lot of the coordination and taking some of it off of me. So we're proposing a promotion for her. The building official is Joe P. We call him Joe P. New employee. He's also interested in obtaining his code enforcement license. So him and I are both gonna go get our license. I have previous experience, so I'm able to get mine, and then he can work under me for 12 months. And then he can get his license. So also we may find somebody else too, but he's interested in filling some of that role as well. That would be great because if he's already out. Right. Right. And it may take a while, and once we create that position, it may take a while for us to fill it. And not to put some kind of. The water system superintendent, that's gonna be reclassifying, Santos. We've already started, Joe and I've already started, delegating and rearranging some of these duties, to try to put more focus in the areas that we need. So he's been acting in that role already. And he'll still have Joe, to help him through some of the system that we don't know and stuff. Our building clerk is Pam. Our meter services supervisor, and we plan Mark Kurt. He's currently, Santos was our meter guy, and since he's picked up a different role, we moved Kurt into that. Kurt will be picking that up. And then we have operator 1, operator 2 slots, depending on their license. If they have a higher license at 2, if they have a low license at 1, those are both vacant. But AJ has 2 people that are ready to go. After this meeting, hopefully, we can get them hired. So we had our job fair, and out of the job fair, we landed a part-time seasonal and also 2 potential laborers. Neither of these 2 that we interviewed have license, so we would have to go with a waiver until they have a license. So we'll go from there. Our wastewater superintendent position would be filled by Joe. And operator 1, we have Jeff, which is probably gonna move to a 2 before long. He'll be able to upgrade his license and we'll go for that. And Sean, would be our other operator until he gets his license for the maintenance technician. But as when he gets his license, he'll be the operator. The GIS technician position, is Sherman Brown. And I suspect things may change when these other 2 positions open, and whether they're filled internal or filled with someone outside. But that's would be his current time. Maintenance technician of the Parks Department is Bill. A part-time seasonal is Eric. We just hired him yesterday, today. Today's first day. Today was recent. It feels like it's Tuesday already. The foreman under streets would be Willie. He's been with us for a while. And then his maintenance technician is somebody, oh, I have them mixed up. Ricardo is over under parks and Bill is under streets. No, it's Roberto. So Roberto is in parks with Eric. And streets is really in Bill.
I love this plan. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, I love that there looks like there's room for growth internally. I think with smaller cities, a lot of times, you know, people have to go somewhere else to move up and to get certifications and to find. I think you have a great path for a lot of our employees to continue to get their licenses and move up up internally, and that's.
I think what's great about this chart is it makes it the path visible to everyone who works in your department. I can see it if I work my butt off.
Yeah, we've had those comments from our staff, and I felt that until we did something like this, it was gonna be hard for us to fill our positions.
Very well.
So what are you wanting to do now?
Now, would be the utilities manager position. To post on, we have the funds, it would just be getting us out there a little quicker, right?
And it could take some time, but
To find somebody. And,
not the public works manager.
and I think waiting until after October, because we've got some internal things we need to get going, but I think just going one of those now, not putting another supervisor in place, especially since we're hiring these two operators, these two employees who don't have a license.
And we have two on the promotion. Trying to encourage that something like this sooner than later.
Yes, and like I said, it's minimal, because there's only a few more days left.
Didn't you say street superintendent also?
The street superintendent slated out for 26, that may move up soon, but right now. We outsource all of our large repairs. We would have to have the equipment to go with it. So. Maybe something that we look at sooner than later, but we're not ready. Now or next year.
Can I make sure that I understand that as we move forward, all of these are already in the budget, right? Not yet. So none of the ones, just the point, just the kind.
But based on those, that one staff and the equipment that I mentioned, it's about 338,000. And I've identified 392,000 out of line items that's not gonna be spent. So that still leaves another 60,000, and then there was some others that I just said, well, I may spend it, I don't know. So that's a conservative 338. And I can tell you where those are, so that you can see them in your big staple package system here.
So I understand we have additional revenue this year, but how is this, we're dealing with 375,000, which is kind of the amount that we have left. How is this gonna impact that? You understand what I'm saying?
The bottom line, where we say.
Yeah. So we said in here, right, we've got the 514 is kind of our surplus, but we know 140,000 of that's gonna be computers, so now we're down to 375, that's the surplus. How do these new staff, even though we have budget and this year's budget,
Right.
how is that gonna impact next year's?
So now
Because,
you get, the other is, we've got break even,
right,
but I've not factored in a lot of that revenue.
okay,
A lot of the revenue from the police department, fire department. There's a lot of the revenue based on the south and student elements.
I don't think the water rating.
40,000 is over 5 years too. So it's
so
not
that's it now.
really. So.
Well, but the water rate increase shouldn't be a.
I
That
think that's
number
what I
anyway,
asked, we're gonna do
because
all
that's
that.
enterprise.
I'm gonna get
We're gonna buy all the hardware right now.
all
Yeah,
this.
so she's got both enterprise and general fund.
Yeah.
Right, but are any of these positions being funded out of enterprise?
That position would be enterprise.
And that's where we have to go back to the enterprise fund and see what's there.
Right, I'm seeing that, right. With what you brought up, right, we have to work with, so.
Yeah, and that's why I was. trying to-
Yeah. That's good.
We're
That's in.
breaking the, we gotta rework the revenue.
Utilities manager, enterprise, the other three positions.
So 3-year general fund, one is the one we're recommending is the final out. Or for the field now there.
Yeah. But
And do we have the money in the enterprise fund to be able to, because aren't we in deficit on the enterprise?
We are, she's looking at the budget. budget has cuts. So if we underspend the budget, we would reduce the budget. Make the budget. Now, I'm talking about this year, I'm talking about this year.
So the 392 that's unspent was a deficit. So you're saying you have 392 left in the budget, but that budget was a deficit to start.
The deficit in the enterprise is not as much as we thought it was. It's not.
That's right. But I see your point, that we have to. We've got to finalize these budgets so we know what the deficit for.
At the end,
What's is.
at the end of that year, we can't approve deficit budget.
We won't renew that.
Right.
So just based on the budget, this year's budget, we budgeted 1.6 million for water. And I show next year, we're only gonna budget 1.6. So we're looking at 30,000 increase next year. For sewer, this year we budgeted 1.3, but next year we're only requesting 779,000.
And that's all enterprise.
That's why.
What's the revenue?
The current budget for revenue in the water is 1,230,000. Versus
Can you
expense.
tell me where we are in here so I can look at it too?
Yeah, so look at 201-4,000. Toward the back.
Is there one?
201 is water. 4,000 is revenue.
Okay, I see it.
Okay, see the 1,230,000?
Yes.
Compare that to. Go to the page that shows. The total for 201-5201. It's 2 pages behind that. So it's. See the 1,168 or 158, that is the. Expense, and then you can see the. Budgeted
So we budgeted
deficit.
adjustment of 428.
Right.
That's in water.
That's water.
Okay.
Now sewer is gonna be 2,024,000,
Okay. That's the 669.
669, and then a couple pages back, we should see an expense of 1,113,000.
So we're actually. And those two to the negative of 900,000. 875,000.
That's right.
So we basically have no enterprise left to spend, right? I mean, is that how am I following that?
What it sounds to me is we've got to transfer money from general fund into enterprise funds to break even.
Some math here that's not right. You're still, Mike is still trying to get a handle on. It's capital. This is a capital issue in that budget. I believe that the same reason the police department budget is 300,000 over right now. Is because our capital. failed in general. I believe that we have some fund balance or some capital somewhere. That equates to this month. There may be a slight deficit because of the water rate, but there should not be $900,000.
Right. So can we put off making a decision on employees come down on enterprise fund until we meet again and hopefully have a lot of those.
We have the 2 purchases this year.
Right.
So
Yeah, we can try and say. And figure out what those grade increase.
Impact is.
Yeah, that's the impact.
these large items that were put into the capital budget for water and sewer. A lot of them are paid from impact fees and so forth, so it's gonna be a matter of. True.
Got math revenue.
Water, basically the enterprise fund reserve, you got just shy of $1 million. Cash. You know, that's just money that was stuck there. Unknown purpose. It's still a work in progress.
There's $1 million in surplus.
$988,000.
The water stories are.
I'm all for doing this.
I know.
Oh,
I just
100%.
wanna make sure the math works for us to do this.
We still not totally tracking on the capital
I need that
enterprise.
plan.
Which one?
Well, I thought it was all coming out of enterprise, but it's like some of it's under capital.
Well,
That's what I'm not.
it's still an enterprise fund, it's just a capital expenditure.
Is
So typically, we wouldn't put a $1.8 million capital project in our line. Because if the money's not in the budget, it's gonna lock it up where we can't do the other purposes. That's what it's got.
Right now. There is still accounts that the mayor is concerned about. There's an account, but there's the 2020, the account we will remember, those of you who hear or watch. 2020, we have a tax note to do streets and police cars. There's still $687,000 in that account that's not been spent. But we firmly believe it's been spent because we got all of the roads were done. But we can't
We
find,
got all the police cars that we.
yes, but we can't,
Not all of those. are done.
This was.
well, not all the roads were done, but the roads that were budgeted for. Because we actually had to pull back. You'll remember, it was 1.4 million and we pulled back to 8.
Yeah.
So those $800,000, so I think the tax note was 100, or was $1 million and some change. And we bought 200 and something thousand in police cars, we spent 800 on streets. But there's still, and I know the streets were done. But there's still 687,000 in that account. That we don't necessarily understand the math on how it did not get where it was supposed to be.
There's also a 2,000 certificate of obligation. It doesn't exist on any debt service list. It's got $121,000.
Miscellaneous.
It is a challenge. I think that we have some work to do on that part. We need to figure out the numbers and where they go. I know that Mike has determined that there are probably somebody was doing hundreds of entries,
Journal entries.
journal entries into the system to fix these issues.
What do the auditors say?
I know, that's what. I was
It's
thinking about.
old fashioned accounting is what it is in the new system.
So what I asked the auditors to do, I'm gonna compile all the adjusting journal entries. And walk through them, the ones I don't understand fully, walk through them with them. Cause I can't close the year not knowing what those adjusting journal entries were. Some of them make sense, moving capital purchases from enterprise fund to a capital fund. That makes sense. Booking depreciation on those assets, that makes sense. But some of the other stuff, I'm probably gonna need some professional help to tell me what's going on with those. But that's my point. I don't, looking forward to closing the year out. I couldn't complete that circle, so I talked to the audit partner. He said that they would walk through those.
So there's like a debt service operating account with like 86,000 on it. There's another debt service like reserve account.
To answer those,
Another $218,000.
to answer those questions, you have to re-engineer the entries that took place to give rise to it.
That's why.
Which could be 10 or 12 transactions, or it could be 10 or 12,000. Don't know. Probably not that size, but it could be hundreds. And it takes time to go through those.
Yeah, I'm like, what's the 218? Was that an over collection on the INS stuff? It's just much more have to.
Yeah.
You
can
can
guess,
guess,
but
but done when the
Re-engineer it, I'm not gonna go through the transactions.
So yeah, on the enterprise stuff, also look at what the impact of not taking out the administrative fees. Transferring the cap to the general fund. What that impact is on that enterprise fund.
You did that, did you not? You mentioned that.
That's 130-something thousand.
So they're 135, is that from the?
That was what we was calling the franchise fee.
Yeah.
We put the admin fee in there.
All right. Oh, that's. I'm mistaken. It was the franchise fee was back down. I'm connected.
It was the auditor that said the franchise fee.
They not.
They were fine with the admin. So what we decided is let's take the franchise fee out for now until our rate increase and the dust settles with our enterprise fund. And then if we can go back in there and raise our admin fee, we can make up the difference in the admin fee.
Those franchise fees were 137,000.
So what would not charging the enterprise fee admin cost? Due to?
Admin was like another 150,000. Right here.
I'm trying to get you where you want to be.
It almost seems like we're.
I think I'm there.
We're not.
It's the short point of money.
We're not robbing.
Oh, no, but we're taking it from the enterprise. That's what I'm saying, we're robbing the enterprise.
I think that's what's going on with the franchise.
Right.
And the addition of that.
Yeah, and from what I understand with them, with the enterprise funds, you really don't want to take the money out of it. You want to reinvest that enterprise money back into the water and sewer.
Infrastructure.
Yeah.
That gives you some debt capacity.
Mhm.
Are we looking at our overall bank balances against what we supposedly have in all of these? And it's right. We have the money we say we have.
That's what we're talking, these are the bank balances.
Yes. Yeah.
They're named. Yeah, we're like, what the hell is?
So you got this giant pot of money over here with all these different accounts.
Yeah.
And then you have a budget over here. And in between these two are journal entries. And these journal entries are what's causing the problem. This is going to be our hardest year. This budget year is going to be our hardest year that we have trying to figure this out. And it may be that we may have to take money from one of these accounts, shore it up and start over from scratch again and not worry about it. It may be what you just said. We may have to go to one of these accounts, figure out why something was the journal. Why what this money, see, because I think I believe, and that's just purely supposition. I believe there's money in those accounts that belongs in the enterprise. But how to get them there is the journal entries that we've not determined.
Well, as long as our account, our, firm says, our
Fund
audit firm
balance-
says, yes, go ahead and do that, then.
The fund balances were tied out at the end of the year. So the answer to your question is I'll set to go through and figure out how the fund balance in the balance sheet ties out to the bank balance. These are.
Years ago,
I know,
there's a 2,000 CO with $101,000. How do they justify that when there's no 2,000 CO to compare it?
I don't think they're looking at it. Oh, absolutely.
how the, for years now, right? Couple years.
The 2,000 would probably refinance.
Yeah.
How do the auditors just approve
When they
that
were
or not?
back in
At least
oil.
bring it up
Because
as a finding.
technically there's nothing. It's on there.
That's what there's.
They may not even go that into what it is. They don't look on every
Yeah, the auditor doesn't go through every single transaction. that we make.
Right, I'm just looking at balances.
Yeah.
If there's a balance and they can't tie that to something, I would think an auditor would flag that type of
So-
thing. What
so-
is in this?
So first year I went over to Point Bank to get on the signatures, there was like.
Yeah.
Accounts or something. You sat there for an hour. Signing things, yeah, I don't even know what all these accounts. are.
I'm glad they're signing.
They're the ones that get approved.
At least
Well,
now, do it like, do it like.
What we
At
have
least
about-
it's like they give you a service. Right. That's right. We're gonna bring. Cash ends up like that. It's the same. All these transactions in and out, impact cash, impact the balance. Sheet. At the end of all your transactions, when you close out your period. You have a balance that says there should be $2 million in this particular general ledger account. And where is that $2 million at? It's gotta be in that bank statement. Now, the mayor's question is, what transactions give rise to the balance?
Right.
And that's where you get into the complexity of trying to re-engineer the activity that gave rise to those ending balances. Now, those ending balances were tied out, the bank balances were confirmed, so that the cash is there and the record of that cash on our books is there, that ties out. Our question is, can we understand the transactions that gave rise to that ending balance? That's a great question, and that's where we gotta dig into the detail of all the transactions. That $2,000 you're talking about, Mayor, may have resulted from only 5 or 6 transactions. You take that haystack and you find them, you reconstruct it, and then I can tell you exactly where that came from and what's in it now. But I just haven't done that work. So the other question that will lead to. I think some of those certificate of obligation bond funds from 20 years ago or whatever. Can you now legally take those and move them in the general fund? Right. And that may be something we have to ask the attorneys. And that is the reason to do this, to find out what are these funds? What is the status of them? What can they be useful? That's exactly why we should do this.
So can we hire or audit people to do extra work, to research this? Because so we can get all this done by the time we need the budget.
I know that's my biggest concern is there's a lot of unknown. I know you're working a lot of hours. But how do we get it done so we can understand it before we vote on the budget?
Well, let me go back to this page. This is why I'm so confused. We're saying it's a $900,000 deficit on 6/11. But my understanding was the deficit came down to $100, 100,000. That's what you showed here on 7/11, it's 95,000. That's what it is. It was not $1 million.
Well, we were
Yeah,
looking at
right.
this year's budget.
This year,
Well,
but
Yeah, that's the number.
This is what. We're looking at fiscal year 2022. It's 875, which is exactly what we have, that's what we budgeted. This is going forward, right?
Right.
Which pulls out the 135. Some of those things. I think. So we're closer
So
next
much
year
closer, yeah.
with what we have, but that doesn't include some of these positions,
And some of the revenue, yes.
right?
I'm dealing with that. The question is, how do we iron this out in the next month and a half?
well, I think we can get the budget for next year right. This year's budget is. We still don't know what happened.
I know, but until we understand the current budget, we don't know what we have left for.
If you have a deficit.
Right. Because what Leanne is saying is she's got 392,000 unspent in her budget, but her budget is $875,000 deficit. But we have 392 of this 875, 872 deficit. So we would still be $500,000 deficit. Even though it's budgeted, it's a budgeted deficit. Okay. So if it's not, then let's phase it out quickly, and then we get people to eat. But sitting there, because then I feel better about even, going into next year, because then we have we have the people out, right?
So I think this number's coming. Since we haven't
Right.
included the rate increase. This is the incorrect solid waste number. It's all in the-
So for the 2016 water bond, the water tower, that original 5 million, there's still $2.2 million in that. That's out. That's also, where that $2.2 million.
To finish the CIP project, so we've got the well. Some of that money was earmarked for this other well from Rock Hill, which there's not gonna be enough left to do that. Rock Hill well. But, we have about 800,000, I think we still owe, hydro resources. And then there, rainwater was about 1.2. So I know we've got 2 million, into finish up as well.
So going back, can you get us some quotes from another accounting firm to jump in and try to help? That they through this, and bring that back to us, so. I mean, you're doing a great job, but you're one person.
Yeah.
Right, we just need to get you to a clean slate for all the previous stuff, and figured out, and smoothed out.
And then get the, cheap rates. So as we have them.
Because I would feel a whole lot better if they could have said, oh, wow, y'all can do some of this. We just need to make it here.
Well, I'm into a lot of these question marks, in fact, the enterprise fund, they also in fact.
The general fund, too. Yeah.
It may be that our current. College fund.
Because you still have to do the day-to-day now, instead, not just the looking back. There.
So if these, all right, we're seeing all these problems now. They were here last year. They were here the year before. They were here the year before. They were just hit. And that's what you're at with. The full one stream.
Yeah.
And it's a head grenade. No, that's just it. I just hope we're real happy when they come to their final conclusion. Yeah. Yeah, but we need to know this. No, absolutely. So there is, one degree of, hope and light. It's like I say that the cash that exists in the bank. Yeah. Is the same number that's on the books. So that tells you that the transit, whether or not I can reiterate what those transactions were. They tied out with cash, which is the final determinant of whether you're booking these things correctly. So that works. Every month, every bank statement ties out to our books. So the activity that we do on a daily basis is correctly recording the transactions. You know this from running a business. The current transaction. Well, we started though with a reconciled balance and we kept it in reconciled. So that's all good news. I think what we all have, our question is, can you teach us how this works? Can we understand what originally went into those banks? What's the current status? It's like taking an
Why did we
inventory.
take it out of that? If we it obviously went in for a certain purpose, why didn't we pull from that account?
Right.
That's why.
And I don't have a manual that says for this particular bond, I mean, I can tell you all about the bond, the amortization on it, who cares? What was it designed to do? And how much of that did we do and how much did we have to change it? Did we have to mix it around? That's the hard part of explaining that.
Right, but if we know that there was like a tax number for streets, and we're trying to figure out how to pay for another street project.
then we need to know that that 600,000 is there to use for three. But that's like the other account we talked about, all the development funds, and fire station fund and park fees and street impact fees. All those are getting typically put into that development fund account. That's why it's over $5 million. And all the other ones are low balances. If those were into their correct accounts, then we would know we got this much for parks, this much for fire station. We don't know if any of those are correct, because it looks like most of that got. I'd say the fire and parks is probably right, but that development fund account is missing the streets. Some of that went to streets. And that streets number was bigger than the development number was $437. The streets number was $1,637. But there's $5 million and no streets accounts anyway. There's not even an account for that.
But I think there's other fees that go to development that are not just the breakdown of the permitting fees. And that would impact us also.
I do
Like
think,
the reimbursements like we had from developers. That goes in there. It just accumulates, because we don't take it out.
Yeah, but if we're getting a reimbursement from a developer, then that's going to reimbursement expense we've already made, so it has a location.
General fund.
Not into a logic account that's meant to collect.
Well, it should go into the general fund reserve.
Right.
I should look it up there. There's probably some transactions like that.
Well, that's like the email I sent you. To me, that development fund account, she needs to be renamed streets, and then that $437, because it's a smaller amount. Separated out into the reserves, because that number's on it, it's unallocated, it's done on literally whatever we want. So section off the assigned amount, put the unassigned amount.
I do think this, though, I think we need to still do the promotions. I think those are the current employees are already doing those jobs. And I think we need to recognize that they're doing it already through those promotions. That's just my take on that.
The cost is negative.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do.
We can come back to. I'm gonna do that soon, rather than later. Maybe we can have an agenda item for 26. Because I would really like to discuss this. I'm concerned about the issues that we've had in the past, that the council is all aware of. This is what Deanne and I talked about. We need this person to come and be inspected. So that we can stay on top of these inspections. I want to get this cleared up as quickly as possible so we can get back to you with the request to hire this person. Because in my opinion, it's the most important hire we're going to make in the next few months. To bring this person in to get us online, make sure we have buildings in correct places. Those that are signed for the project.
Do you guys don't have a job description already back there?
So, and I don't want to say that we have, there's no blame here, but I'm saying, because we have a lot of employees that are doing a lot of work. And they're wearing a lot of hats. So that's what's important is to get this, and the council has recognized that for how long. You know that we have a few, I should have said, we have a few employees doing a lot of it. That's the. So I want to get, yes.
So one of the great things about our personalized.
Yeah.
You know, yes.
But we'll get to the bottom of it, and get it back to you. So that we have something solid for you to see if you can do it, make sure that you know it's okay to report.
I think this, you guys tell me what you're thinking on this. If we get this enterprise fund where you're actually adding in what you think we need into that, right, the things you need to talk about, and we can absorb this 86 that we're thinking for the utilities manager. I think we're forward looking at this point. We know we've got issues in the current budget, but if we can support it through this and these numbers with what you're adding in, I think we move forward with getting that position. We gotta get the some breathing
I
room.
want to see how the new rates affect.
That's what I'm saying. And that's gonna be in here, right? That's what you're gonna add into here.
Yeah, I think that takes.
I do too. And then we. As long as I feel like this is got the capacity for that position to do it for next year.
Those positions are gonna be fully funded for at least the first 2 years with fees that we're gonna be charging our contractors. Even if that number doesn't work out. Also, it's a cost savings, and I forgot to tell you that part. So with this Keeneland and Top One development, we have a portion of the inspection fees we have to pay too. So we're not only, gonna be saving money. We're gonna be saving money plus making money. We're gonna have a revenue stream coming in, plus we're gonna be saving money that we would have to pay out of budget to pay a third party inspector.
And when are those gonna come on, when we're gonna start seeing those?
No, as soon as we go out for bid. We are gonna be in construction before the end of this year. We have to. We had a meeting today to talk about when we can go out for bid. They're ready. They're on a shelf, ready to go out for bid. So, we're just working on an agreement with that one. And we'll be ready. Construction should start within the next 3 months.
I just want you to understand that. When we're saying, trying to get help and those stuff, it's not saying that we don't trust you to do this at all. We just need extra people. This, y'all need to create this problem. Y'all kind of compare it to it. We appreciate you very much. I want you to have it.
We just want to bring you good information.
Yes, yes,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
I think everybody sees that.
yes, we appreciate you. It's completely different. It's made for the last 2 years.
Well, personally, just the trust.
Right.
Like, I feel like when you guys say something, you can take it to the bank, like, I trust that what you're saying is true. So there's, information to back it up, and it's fine to say, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I have to.
Right?
We don't know, we know.
Yeah.
Can I say something about the Silverado agreement?
Yeah.
We changed our.
Yeah.
There is 120 day out, but when we get 1,500 home, even if they get out of the agreement, they're ready for 60 months. After that, we're going to be paid by that was put in there, so
That's good.
until there's 5 years there.
Plus, there's a legal issue. We have to ask Patricia about it. To me, there's a legal issue with the ILA. And that is the original development agreement with the lakes or with DR Horton. And the original development agreement with Sandrock require them to enter into an ILA with us for their service. So not only will they have to break the ILA, get out, then they're going to be in breach of their contract and their development agreement. So we have other safeguards in place. I want to ask Patricia though, to make sure
Yeah.
she agrees with that. And if it's on the police side, and why fire is 120 and police is 60, I'll never know.
I like
We-
that.
Huh?
I like
But when you do police, it's a 60 day and then fire the 120.
That's why you remember 60. He remembers the 20.
So I want to ask Patricia to make sure that we're right on, but I think that would be breach of contract. Because they entered into a contract with us to provide those services, and the ILA is just a determinant.
But I do remember Mark and I talking about that fire station and something happened. So that's why that's in there, so they pay for it.
What else do we have for tonight?
It's like we're good. All I need to see is what's in there.
And I heard Mike say about I asked Brittany to add in the landscaping at the library. I think that we need to get the front of the library with good top. We are in progress right now, we're spending a little money here. We have an AQAC person who has never been in City Hall before coming to examine clients so hot and what's going on. I climbed up on the ladder last Friday and barely knew the air that weekend. And I would like to know why. I trust Mr. Reed and he's done a great job for us, but I'd like to get my doctor up in a second. Do we need to just rip this out and read it?
There's the landscaping at the library include the sign. There's the backs of the letters have been dropped out, and that's a huge wash machine, so that you.
I did not, but I would not have a problem. Using some of the building maintenance money next year. at this time. Brittany and I have talked about that before. I think that's on our list.
Let's take a lot more.
Yeah, I think that.
You gotta get the walking map out of the way. You can see the walking map.
No, I would, we make it building. All the time. How much is the difference?
About 100K. Hey, only certain places. can use it.
I don't know.
If you don't want to talk. There's only one digital sign in town.
Sonic, two churches, school and church.
One capital. Somebody that we wanted to move up to this year. Somebody sure. Bookshelf supports in the library. Oh, yeah. That was $8,600 on our list. So move that up to this year and we backed it out of last year. Or next year. So, I didn't mention that. With the volunteer, and that's great for them. Bookshelf, the book supports.
We're just waiting for those to be shipped out. And what was that? Did we get anyone outlined for the position? We have been interviews, we've done them next week. We're nearing town candidates, so we have some. Awesome. Should be posting. And I saw online that fire is, we have things on for hire.
Yeah, we still have one opening right now, so we've had really good response. Paul Key, and the last thing I talked about, we're trying to increase our presence on Facebook. So he's done a great job. So yeah, we've had some really good responses with actually firefighter with paramedics. One job list aside because it's getting very hard to hire firefighter.
Did you happen to get one that lives in Auburn, TJ?
There's few that are local, I don't know. I hadn't looked at all the applications. I looked at like 3 or 4 when they first came in. There's several that are local, so I'm not sure who all of that.
I do. You met him the other night. Yeah, you.
So,
Oh, no.
So, we discussed at the last meeting just briefly about adding a school resource officer next year with a partnership through, Wind Ridge and Sandrock. So, I'll propose to you again that Providence is, we're still in discussions for them to cover it. 60%. The city would cover 25% for the Wind Ridge. And then the cost increases at Sandrock, I used that as one of our reasons that we were considering adding that, so that would cover the other 25%. If everybody's agreeable with that, I'd like for Mike to go ahead and drop that into the budget for next year, so you can see it the next time we meet. And we'll add that revenue, so that we have that. It'll just be a placeholder at the moment. Because no participation from that, we have not gotten to participate yet.
so we're saying we want to pay for an officer checking their school.
Yes. At the moment.
2 of them.
One.
Didn't I see it in SRO or no?
Go
No,
between 2 schools.
Sandbar. Didn't they need to do the SRO?
So when we added in this 25, this is what we're talking about, part of this 25 that you would be including their increase.
I used that as one of the reasons why we were going.
Okay.
One of the reasons that our call air service, having officers out there all the time. And I did not say we were going to supply, I did say we were. I either said we were considering an SRO or we were going to have increased proposal.
Well, they're in high school. They're big for high school.
But I used it as school as one of the reasons, so that we needed to increase our cost. We're basically level. Fire's almost 2.5. that for some reason, we didn't do police and fire at the same amount. Contract. We weren't involved.
I just hate to use the increase in the fire being collected in Sandra, which was meant to pay for services for her residents. And stick it in a school that doesn't want.
It's nothing from fire. It would only be for the police.
Yeah.
You said fire, got me a little nervous.
Well,
I think those.
Actually, I think fire
would,
yes,
would appreciate it.
and there's another deal here with this. It's not a done deal, so let me put an executive item on the to kind of give you an update on the Sandrock and Silverado situation. It's not a bad thing, but I don't want to say it because it's not solid yet, so I don't want to say it in an open meeting right now. But I'll put an executive item next time so that I can give you a little bit more information that might make that a little bit more palatable. Because like Mr. Bronner is saying, the kids in Sandrock are going to be going to that school, and Denton ISD is not going to put a police officer in elementary school. They just will not do this crazy. They don't have a police department. So they have to, they use local jurisdictions to file all of their SRO. That's why there's 6 police officers. Proud.
That's a decision. You gotta pay for it.
Well,
They
we're still
can
gonna
get
reach
their
out.
department, pay them for the local department, but they're not going to do it either.
They're not wanting to do either in elementary school. So now their position may have changed, and Brian is going to reach out to them and ask them to participate. And if they do, that's fantastic. Even if they would give us 25%. Yes. If we could, if you know a school board member, they can kind of push to get there. You know. Now, there is some. There is some still that thought there, even after what has occurred, that police officers in elementary schools, it's a lot, because you're paying a lot of money to have a police officer sitting there in case something happens. Now, me as a parent,
Is worth every day.
every penny of it, but there are those people out there that their kids are grown and they don't even like paying taxes as it is.
Oh, somebody on Facebook is thinking about it.
So, there's that struggle. So maybe we'll just have to see what they're willing to do this year. With the increase in property values, they may have enough money to help us out. But Brian is a partner in this, and he has the connection with Denton ISD and wants to reach out to them again and see. We've not talked to them since the last meeting. So
The Texas Agriculture Commission. Said Miller, he pledged at the convention that for every school that didn't have, that's all I will do is use funds to put SROs cafeterias. He and I are great friends. He's come to speak about that. He's going to speak on our sport about what's the Miller, he's in Stephen Green. He was the house rep down there and then went to church.
I mean, there's a push, so you should, and I say yes. If there's a police officer in their school for 25% of the cost.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow. But think about how many elementary schools they have.
And then you get principals that are, these two schools have police officers and are combined them.
Well, the principal in Providence Elementary is desperate. She wants. So that's good. And Providence is willing to. Providence is, they're willing to do what it takes to get it done. I know that for true. And the fact that we're partnering on it is just better. Because I'm not so sure that we've not talked about it lately, but he's more interested in having the officer in that school, not going back and forth. Yeah, so we need to know what Denton ISD wants to do, because that would change the shape of it. I think you going back and forth is fine, but we'll just have to see what they're doing to talk about.
So we'll put that in as a placeholder. That way you can see it. And we'll know that we'll have know exactly what the amount is.
I just want my water.
And we'll,
I will fund.
there we go.
That shouldn't cost us anything. I mean, really. What, the school doesn't pay for it.
So
If the school ends up paying for it, it shouldn't cost us anything except the 3 months a year he's not at the school.
what we would do, if they want to fund it, it would be, the normal would be a 75. They cover 75, we cover. Since we get it.
They, you know,
But a lot of that summer's taken up with vacations. You really don't get them for the whole summer. You lose them for, because they're gonna have to do a week of training, and they're going to take a couple of weeks off of vacation.
Getting that speed covered, it's gonna be 25% that's left. So from us, we thought,
That is correct. Yeah, it'd be a 75. So we have your regular meeting on the 26th. Do you want to go ahead and schedule? I want to come back to you at the 26th with some solid information on the enterprise fund and where we're at, what we were projecting. Is there a deficit? Is there not a deficit? Is this an issue with journal injuries? Where are we at on it? I want to come back and give you that information. Mike's going to add in the new rates.
so we also get the tax roll number.
We're one day off of that. We can probably get them for the Friday before that we close. They're supposed to certify the 27th, right? 25th. We'll have it for that night.
Maybe. Yeah, but if we had certified, that would be nice to have.
Sure. You got that, Mike? Yep. So if you're meeting on the 26th, we can cover a few of these items with you at that meeting. Do you want to go ahead and schedule an August budget workshop? It could be a short one, it could be after the meeting, it could be. Yes.
I feel like I have that day. Yeah, so my plan is to rush here, skin most of this. But
If
I like.
it works with everybody else, Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday, work great. Tuesdays are actually a bit hard. So if it works for everybody else, then fine, I'll make it work like I always have.
I was in like 24th or 25th, or he's thinking like 17, 18.
I think like 17, 18.
I was thinking.
Or maybe 10.
Yeah, no, we before.
Maybe 10. Yeah.
11th it's better for Thursday.
11th is P and Z meeting.
Does everything work for you?
Well, she just said,
Oh, okay.
not a problem. We have a bunch of people who need to be at that.
Yeah, it's not like, it's not going to be posted scenes for those where would we?
We could.
Oh, we can go to the library.
Either way.
Uh-oh.
No, that was
Okay.
good.
Good.
Yeah, kick somebody out of the conference.
We're gonna
I
have
have
to
our
do
meeting
yoga.
since 11, 7,
Yeah,
11.
yoga.
Yoga budget.
Yeah, yoga. That's cool. What country?
We can move things.
Yoga.
Watch the video, YouTube. Oh, this sounds scary.
Yeah, I'm just finding up to the video.
Gary, take this, you take yoga.
If you're good on Thursday, the 11th at 6 p.m., we'll decide between now and then where to meet. We can push P and Z to the library. We can go down to the program room at the library, whatever. You want to do. Okay. All right, July 11th, I'm sorry, August 11th, 6 p.m. Do you have a preference for, do we have a food preference here?
I'm just like, I think you guys are awesome.
Y'all want Subway sandwiches?
No. Yeah. Yeah.
There went your.
We'll figure out.
Check it out. Food experience. Awesome. Maybe the good studies for lower. Check out our options. Can you put on executive session on next meeting an update on trash? That's what. We don't see it. Because I think we all got a copy of the. Yeah. for the open record. I think. Right. I wouldn't expect. I got the same, I wouldn't have expected anything less. Yeah. I'm surprised whether they didn't all request open.
Yeah, yes. I was trying to think of the best, I can't say. anything.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I was
Can
trying
we
to
put that as a fact?
We dealt with it. Patricia had dealt with it. Patricia had dealt with the request that's still in process. And-
But by the time we do.
But by the time you meet, it will be, we will have responded to the request. I could probably read something to you from Patricia. And then, okay, we can. I want to say it here, but.
Right, no, I agree, that's what I was saying.
Yes, we can. have it.
Maybe, if we talked about apartment behind, which we haven't had a lot, especially our little strip of.
They have not reached out to us, the mayor asked me about it. We'll reach out to them.
I talked to Kim and she said that there's a way the city. Switched. That's what she did.
She probably was the one who's out there. That's your problem.
That's when you go on, but it's
Space still.
but then, you know, it's your act.
It's just.
It's a drainage easement and it's already under the Wind Ridge. It's in Wind Ridge's plat that it is theirs to maintain and not ours. The city has no obligation or no responsibility for that drainage.
Right, I mean,
Any,
I don't think,
any drainage easement in that area.
right, but I think that's not the issue, I think that's the.
Yeah, they just have, but they're the ones that have to.
Right, yeah, they never doubted that.
Yep, absolutely.
But then you just have this. Yes. That's a 15.
You know, the ones you be tapped with.
Not the most.
All good?
I'm good, but y'all.
Motion adjourned. Well, I apologize, I was so exhausted. That's what. Thank you. Can we turn off the recording? Is there a recorder on there?